The snow had fallen heavy that week, coating the thick forest with a silence so deep it seemed sacred. The trees stood like sentinels cloaked in white, and the only sign of life was the thin trail of smoke curling from a lonely cabin nestled in the heart of the pines. For Bo Carter, the woods were all he'd ever needed. After years working timber up in Oregon, he'd traded it all for solitude and a stretch of land where no one asked questions. But that morning, the stillness broke. As he chopped wood behind the cabin, a shadow moved in the distance. A woman, barely able to stand, wrapped in what looked like hospital blankets, stumbled out from the tree line and collapsed in the snow. Bo didn't hesitate. He dropped the axe and rushed to her side, surprised by how light she was as he lifted her. Her skin was ice cold, her lips tinged blue. She wasn't wearing boots, just socks soaked through. He got her inside, fed the stove more wood, and covered her in blankets. Her pulse was weak but steady. As the fire cracked to life, she stirred, whispering one word, "Don't tell them." He didn't know who them was, but he knew fear when he saw it. Her eyes darted like prey, even half-conscious. He made her tea, warmed broth, and tended to her feet, which were bruised and raw. She slept for 13 hours straight, and when she woke, she gave only a first name, Lena. No last name. No explanation. Bo didn't push. The cabin had always been a place of healing, of second chances. He'd built it that way. He simply nodded, told her she was safe, and left it at that. But he felt it, some weight behind her silence. Something more than trauma. Something darker. Over the next few days, Lena regained her strength. She barely spoke but watched Bo with quiet intensity, as if trying to decide whether or not to trust him. Bo noticed the way she flinched at every sound, how she sat with her back to the wall and never let herself fully relax. Still, she helped where she could, sweeping the floors, chopping vegetables, even patching a tear in his only good coat. She was trying, he realized. Trying to be normal, even though her eyes held the kind of terror Bo hadn't seen since his brother came back from the war. On the 5th day, the storm lifted, revealing a world glittering with sunlit frost. They sat by the fire that evening, sipping strong coffee in silence. Bo finally spoke. "Was someone after you?" Lena stared into the flames. "Yes," she whispered. "But I don't think they are done." Bo didn't ask who. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, the old wood creaking beneath him. "Well," he said, "they'd have to get past me first." She looked at him then, really looked. And in that moment, something changed. A flicker of warmth broke through her guarded expression. Bo knew the dangers of inviting a stranger into your home, but his gut said this wasn't just a stray soul. It was someone running from something truly terrible, and maybe, just maybe, someone worth running with. The fire crackled inside the cabin, a warm dance of amber light casting shadows on the walls that had begun to feel like home. Leah sat cross-legged on the rug near the hearth, her eyes fixed on the flames as if searching for something she couldn't quite name. Across from her, Caleb was sharpening a knife, the rhythmic scrape against the whetstone the only sound besides the wind tapping against the wooden shutters. Silence had always come easy between them, it was part of what drew them close, but tonight it felt loaded. Like words were building up behind their teeth, too heavy to hold back for much longer. It had been almost 2 weeks since they'd started sharing the cabin, and every day since had stitched them tighter. The awkward silences of strangers had melted into quiet glances, light brushes of fingers when handing off tools, shared coffee before dawn. And yet, even as they danced around a growing intimacy, Leah felt a creeping chill behind every tender moment. She wasn't lying about who she was, not exactly, but she wasn't telling the truth either. She hadn't told him her real last name. She hadn't told him why she chose this stretch of remote wilderness or why she flinched every time a bird startled from the trees. Leah had trained herself not to think about the past, not the trial, not the man in the suit who offered her a way out, not the envelope with her new identity or the quiet message, disappear or die. But lately, it was getting harder. Caleb noticed the tension in her shoulders when they hiked too close to the edge of the ridge. He saw the way she double-checked the locks, how she kept a knife within arm's reach even at the breakfast table. And tonight, he was watching her with that quiet, unwavering gaze that saw more than he ever let on. She could feel it even when her back was turned. Caleb was starting to question the cracks she hadn't filled in. "You ever been to Colorado?" he asked suddenly, not looking up from the blade. Leah stiffened. "Just a second," before shaking her head. Once, passing through. He murmured. You ever heard of the Merrick family out there? Big scandal a few years back. Youngest daughter vanished after a murder. Real bloody affair. FBI got involved, even the marshals. Leah's stomach tightened. She didn't answer right away, and that silence said more than any words could. Caleb set down the knife. Funny thing is, he said, voice low, they never found her body. Some say she killed her fiancé and ran. Others say she was the next victim and disappeared before they could pin it on anyone. She turned toward him slowly. Her face was pale, but her jaw had hardened. Why are you telling me this? He shrugged. Because you flinch every time I mention Colorado. Because you sleep with your boots on. Because sometimes I hear you whisper names in your sleep. The fire snapped loudly, sending sparks into the chimney. Leah stood up, unsure whether to run or defend herself. Her instinct, for years, had been to disappear when the past caught up. But she couldn't bring herself to walk out the door. Not this time. Not from him. And what would you do, she asked, voice trembling, if I told you that girl never died? That she ran because the man they claimed she murdered was a monster, and someone powerful wanted her gone? Caleb stood slowly, not approaching but not backing away either. I'd ask why you trusted me enough to come here. And then I'd ask if that monster still wants you dead. The words sat between them, thick and heavy as smoke. Leah dropped her eyes to the floor. He's not a man anymore. He's a network. Money. Influence. I testified against him and everything he was building. And then I ran. The witness protection program gave me this life, or told me it could be one. Caleb stepped forward then, just enough to be within reach. And now you think being here, being with me, put you back on his map? Her nod was barely perceptible. I think someone saw me. A hiker. A drone. I don't know. But the forest has been wrong lately. Too quiet. Like it's holding its breath. Caleb looked past her, toward the dark window where nothing stirred. Then back at her face, drawn and hollow in the firelight. Leah, I don't care about your name or what happened back there. But if someone's coming, we need to be ready. No more secrets. No more hiding behind the fire. She reached for his hand then, half expecting him to pull away. But he didn't. He closed the distance and pulled her into his arms, his warmth swallowing hers like armor. She didn't sob. She didn't collapse. She simply breathed, deep and slow, for the first time in years. This wasn't love born from fantasy. It was love born from survival. Outside, the wind changed direction. A twig cracked in the forest, too sharp, too deliberate. Inside the cabin, two people stood as one, no longer wondering if danger was coming, but when. The first light of morning bled through the thick pines, pale and cold, casting long shadows across the ground. Leah awoke to a sound she hadn't heard since she ran, to the click of a rifle being loaded. Her eyes snapped open. Caleb wasn't in bed. A chill ran up her spine as she reached instinctively under her pillow for the blade she kept hidden. Nothing had happened in the night, or so it seemed, but her body knew better than to trust peace when the forest had fallen too quiet. She moved cautiously through the cabin, her bare feet nearly silent against the old wood planks. The door to the front porch was open, letting in the smell of fresh snow. Caleb stood just outside, crouched near the base of the porch, his breath fogging in the morning air. He was studying the snow like it held answers to unasked questions. Caleb. Her voice was barely above a whisper. He didn't look back at first. Instead, he raised a hand to signal silence, then pointed to the ground. Leah stepped outside beside him, and her blood froze. Footprints. Fresh ones. Not theirs. Someone had been here, just hours ago. Maybe minutes. The prince came out of the forest from the east ridge, leading directly up to the side of the cabin, but not to the front door. No knock. No call. Just silent approach. And just as eerily, the prince didn't go back. They stopped at the window by the living room. Then vanished. They watched us, Caleb muttered. Long enough to know where to look. Long enough to know we were here. And then they disappeared without a sound. Tracked? She asked, her throat tight. Maybe. But they are good. Real good. These steps don't sink deep. Light-footed. Trained. He straightened slowly, rifle still in hand. That's not a hiker. That's someone who wanted to send a message. Leah's chest ached with a cold, tight pressure. Then the message is clear. They found me. Caleb turned to her. Then we don't wait for the next move. They spent the next hour securing the cabin. Leah knew the routine well. She had practiced it in safe houses, memorized it during U.S. Marshal drills. She and Caleb moved in tandem, without wasted words. Windows were reinforced with blackout covers and nailed planks. Caleb set up a perimeter, tripwires, bells, broken glass under leaves. Leah double-checked the satellite phone she had hidden under the hearthstone, her only connection to the outside world. "Do you want to call them?" Caleb asked as she tested the battery. Leah hesitated. "Witsec won't bring me back in. They warned me, if I blew my cover again, I was on my own. They can't protect me twice without risking the whole program." Caleb's jaw clenched. "So it's us, then?" "It's always been just me. But now, it's us." That admission shifted something between them. More powerful than the kiss they hadn't yet shared. More intimate than the nights spent beside the same fire. It was a vow, forged in fear and tempered in trust. As night fell, they settled into their makeshift war room. The cabin, once a haven, now felt like a trap waiting to be sprung. Caleb took first watch while Leah tried to rest on the cot. But her mind was a kaleidoscope of memory and worry. She couldn't stop thinking of Vincent Crane, the man who ruined her life. Years ago, she'd been engaged to his son, Ryan. But when she discovered that the Crane family was laundering money for international arms deals and human trafficking, she tried to walk away. That's when the beating started. That's when Ryan's sweet mask cracked. She remembered the last night, the blood on the floor, the screaming, her own breath trapped in her throat as she ran barefoot into the darkness. She'd testified against them. And now, the Cranes wanted her dead to erase the final threat. Around 2 a.m., Caleb shook her awake. His face was drawn, his eyes tight. Someone tripped the east wire. They sprang into action, silent but quick. Caleb moved to the window with his rifle. Leah held her breath. The forest outside was still, too still. Then came a sound, faint, but deliberate. A whisper of movement beyond the trees. A flicker of a shadow. Suddenly, something hit the front porch. A thud, like a body dropping. They ran to the door, hearts hammering. Caleb counted to 3, then flung it open. Nothing. Just the wind and a package wrapped in brown paper. Caleb picked it up carefully. No wires. No ticking. He opened it slowly. Inside was a photograph, one of Leah, taken just days ago at the lake, her face relaxed, unaware. And scrawled across it in thick black ink, "You're not safe anywhere." Leah's knees buckled. Caleb caught her before she fell. He didn't say anything. He just held her while the snow began to fall, soft and cruel. Outside, somewhere in the darkness, their enemy was watching. Bo's world tilted. Suddenly, Lena wasn't just a woman with a haunted past. She was a whistleblower, a target, a ghost the government probably thought was buried. And now, she was his. Not in some possessive way, but in the quiet, soul-deep way that love creeps in when no one's watching. They made love for the first time that night. Not out of passion, but survival. Two broken bodies trying to make sense of something human in a world that had turned monstrous. Bo knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. If they found her once, they'd find her again. He offered to take her to Canada, to disappear off-grid. But Lena hesitated. "There's one thing left I have to do," she said. "There's a file. A copy of everything. If I can get it to the right people, it's over. Sutter goes down. And we're free." Bo agreed. But deep down, he feared freedom might never come. Not when the wolves were already circling. The burned church. They left the cabin under moonlight, hiking through the woods to a crumbling stone chapel Lena remembered from a childhood trip, where she'd hidden the file behind an altar weeks earlier. The snow was knee-deep, and Lena's breath came hard, but she didn't stop. When they reached the chapel, it was smoldering. Someone had burned it to the ground. "Too late," she whispered, dropping to her knees. They knew. Bo scanned the trees, rifle ready, and then came the crack of a branch. A shadow moved. Then another. They were surrounded. A fight and a betrayal. Gunfire exploded from the trees. Bo pulled Lena behind a stone pillar and fired back. The air filled with smoke and screams. 2 attackers fell, But more kept coming. Lena, clutching Beau's coat, whispered, "We have to run." They barely made it out, covered in blood and ash. Lena was hit, just a graze on her arm, but enough to slow her. Beau carried her part of the way back. When they reached a frozen creek, he washed her wound, and she looked up at him with tears. "There's something else I didn't tell you," she said. Beau stared at her. "What?" "Sutter, he wasn't just my fiancé. He was my handler. I worked for them too, once." His heart cracked. The choice. Beau turned away, his hands shaking. "You lied to me." "I didn't know how," she said. "I wanted to tell you, but I didn't want to lose you." He didn't respond for a long time, just stared at the creek, the ice beginning to crack beneath their feet. Finally, he said, "We'll finish this. But when it's done, I don't know if I can come back." She nodded. "That's fair." They crossed the creek as the sun broke over the ridge. Ahead, only one road remained, straight into the lion's den. The reckoning. They found a safe house Lena once knew in the foothills, and inside was a dusty old radio. Lena made contact with a journalist she once trusted. Arrangements were made. Proof would be leaked. But that night, they were ambushed again. Sutter himself walked through the door. Beau raised his gun, but Lena stepped between them. "I'm done running," she said. Sutter smiled. "You never were very good at hiding." Beau fired. Once. Sutter dropped. Lena sobbed, collapsing beside the man she once thought she loved, and who nearly destroyed her. They burned everything. No names. No trails. Just ash and sky. Weeks passed before they returned to the cabin. The snow was melting. The birds had returned. Lena planted herbs in the soil. Beau rebuilt the porch. And when Nakoma, the orphan girl from the village, found her way to them, they opened the door. Because home, they learned, wasn't a place. It was a person. And sometimes, love doesn't save you from the fire. It teaches you how to walk through it.